It was just after 8 a.m. on a Saturday when I pulled into our driveway earlier than usual. Rachel had no idea I'd cut my run short. I'd felt a cramp creeping in around mile 2 and figured I'd call it a day. Besides, the air smelled like fall and I was in the mood to surprise her with coffee, her favorite, extra oat milk, a touch of cinnamon. We hadn't done small things for each other in a while, and I was trying. The house was quiet when I stepped inside. Too quiet, considering it was a weekend and Rachel usually had her Spotify playlist on blast by now. I nudged the door shut behind me with my foot and walked through the living room, our 2 dogs still curled up on the couch, not even lifting their heads. As I climbed the stairs with 2 steaming cups in hand, I rehearsed a corny line in my head, something dumb like, "Guess who brought salvation in a cup?" When I pushed the bedroom door open, everything shifted. She was sitting on the bed, knees tucked under her, face half lit by the phone screen in her hand. Her expression dropped the second she saw me. She flinched, quick and subtle, like someone caught sneaking one more cookie before dinner. Then the phone disappeared under the pillow so fast it might as well have been rehearsed. I caught a glimpse. Just a flash. A paused video. Her. In bed. With someone else. That single frame burned into my memory, her lying back, hair spread across the sheets, eyes half closed, and a man's hand against her bare shoulder. No filters, no watermarks. It was real. "Hey," I said slowly, confused, careful not to spill the coffee. "What was that?" Rachel blinked. "What was what?" I hesitated. My brain didn't know how to process what I'd just seen. "On your phone." She blinked again, then laughed, too lighthearted, too smooth. "Oh my God. You saw that? Wow. Okay. Don't freak out, it's just something my sister sent me." She leaned over and grabbed the latte I brought her, cradling it in both hands like the topic had already passed. "You remember that face swap app she's obsessed with?" She made some stupid deepfake of me, like in a scene from one of those trashy shows we used to joke about. Total prank. I was just checking it to yell at her. Her explanation came out so fast, so casual, like it wasn't the kind of thing that could wreck a person in 3 seconds. I nodded slowly, but my gut twisted. I wasn't a tech guy, not really, but I knew what I saw wasn't from a show. It was filmed in a bedroom that looked disturbingly familiar, the slanted ceiling, the sheer curtains. If that was a prank, someone had gone to a disturbing amount of trouble. Rachel stretched her arms, yawned dramatically, and said, "Anyway, thanks for the coffee. You're the best," as if I hadn't just walked in on a secret that could tear our lives apart. I didn't say anything for a long minute. I sat on the edge of the bed, my coffee untouched, my hands wrapped tight around the cup. "You're saying your sister made that?" She gave me a tight-lipped smile. "Yeah. Dumb, right? When did she send it?" "Last night. Late. I didn't want to wake you." "You were up late?" Rachel shrugged. "I couldn't sleep. I just scrolled through stuff." I nodded again. The problem was she had told me she went to bed at 10. I was the one who had stayed up downstairs watching TV with earbuds in, and I never heard her moving around. And something else. Rachel wasn't the type to leave her phone unlocked, especially around me. Even after 7 years together, she kept it password protected like Fort Knox. But today it had just been there, screen on, video paused. Like it had caught her off guard, like she wasn't expecting company. I sipped my coffee more for something to do than because I wanted it. My hands had started to sweat. "Do you want me to call her?" I asked lightly. Maybe I should tell her that prank crossed a line. Her smile faltered for a fraction of a second, so quick most people wouldn't notice. But I did. "No need," she said. She already texted an apology. Said she was being stupid. I nodded once more slowly. "Okay." The room filled with silence. The kind that's thick and cold and loaded with things you're afraid to say. She picked up her phone again, but now it was dark. Locked. Held tighter. I wanted to ask to see it. But I knew if I asked and she refused, something would snap in me. And if she agreed and I found the video still there, something else would break. So I said nothing. Instead, I got up, kissed the top of her head, and said, "I'm gonna take a shower." I didn't turn around to see her reaction. I didn't want to know if she looked relieved or guilty. I just walked into the bathroom, locked the door, and sat on the edge of the tub. I stayed there for 10 minutes, listening to the silence on the other side. That morning, everything in her home looked the same. The sunlight still spilled across the sheets. Our wedding photo still hung over the dresser. The dog still napped without a care in the world. But something had shifted. Quietly. Permanently. I told myself I was overreacting. That the video, whatever it was, didn't mean what I thought it did. But after that morning, it was like a light had been switched on in a room I didn't know existed. Suddenly, things I'd overlooked for years became glaringly obvious. And once I started noticing, I couldn't stop. It began with the small stuff. Rachel had a habit of going for late-night runs, said it helped her clear her mind. I'd always admired her discipline. She'd come home flushed, damp from sweat, and kiss me on the cheek before heading straight for the shower. But I started checking her running app. At first, it was just curiosity. Then it turned to suspicion. Nothing. No routes logged. No miles tracked. Just a blank history. When I asked about it, she shrugged and said the app had been glitchy, that she'd switched to another one. But when I asked to see it, she changed the subject. Twice. Then there were the notifications. Her phone used to buzz like normal, emails, texts, the occasional Instagram tag. Lately though, it was always on silent, screen facing down. She claimed it was to help her focus, to be more present. I bought it at first. I wanted to believe it. But the number of times she'd leave the room to answer a call or ignore it altogether kept adding up. And the gifts. She started wearing jewelry I didn't recognize. A sleek new bracelet. A pair of gold earrings. One day, a new designer handbag showed up on our entry table. She said it was a gift from a client, a thank you for landing a campaign at work. But when I asked who the client was, she got vague. Just one of the new accounts, she said. Nothing exciting. Rachel had always been good with details, too good. The kind of person who could tell you which wine we drank at our second anniversary. So her sudden vagueness wasn't just strange, it was completely out of character. Then there was the t-shirt. It was a plain gray crew neck, wrinkled, stuffed in the bottom of our laundry basket. Not mine. Not her style. I found it on a Wednesday night when I was sorting clothes, and I held it up like it might bite me. Whose is this? I asked her casually as she walked past the laundry room. She glanced at it, barely pausing. Oh, that? Probably my friend Maya's boyfriend. We were at her place a while ago and I crashed on the couch. That made sense for about half a second. Until I remembered she told me she stayed with her cousin, not Maya. Different weekend. Different city. I didn't call her out on it. Not yet. Instead, I started keeping track. Mentally at first. Then I started writing things down, dates, times, inconsistencies. Not because I was paranoid, but because the truth was starting to feel like something I had to excavate, piece by piece. Every new lie was a crack in the dam, and I had no idea when it would finally burst. There was the business trip she took to Denver. She left on a Thursday, came back Sunday. Told me she'd been swamped with meetings, barely had time to leave the hotel. But when she got back, she was unusually cheerful. Relaxed. Tanned even. Did you get any time to sightsee? I asked her over dinner. She smiled. Not really. Just the view from the hotel window. That night, I found a hotel key card tucked into the back of her carry-on bag. Different brand than the one her company usually used. Different location. When I looked it up, it wasn't a business hotel, it was a boutique townhouse, all brick walls and rooftop terraces. The kind of place that screamed romance, not quarterly planning. Still, I said nothing. I just added it to the list. Looking back, I think I'd always known. Not consciously. Not in a way I could name. But somewhere, deep in my gut, something had been gnawing at me for a long time. Little things that never sat right but felt too petty to bring up. Her quick laughter at other men's jokes. Her sudden fondness for solo trips. The way she started dressing like she was always about to be photographed. None of it had felt big enough on its own. Not until now. One night, I watched her as she got ready for bed. She stood in front of the mirror, her face washed clean, hair wrapped in a towel. She looked beautiful, soft, unguarded, like the woman I'd fallen in love with. But then her phone buzzed. She picked it up, typed something quickly, and set it back down. I caught a flash of her face in the mirror. The smile she had wasn't meant for me. It hit me like a punch to the chest. I knew that smile. I'd seen it 1,000 times over the years, at weddings, at parties, on vacation when she looked at me across a crowded cafe. It was the look she gave when she was completely present, totally lost in someone. But this time, it wasn't for me. It hadn't been for a while. And for the first time, I realized that maybe the cracks hadn't just appeared out of nowhere. Maybe they'd always been there, hidden beneath the surface, slowly widening over time. Maybe I just hadn't wanted to see them. That night, I lay in bed beside her, pretending to be asleep as she scrolled through her phone, screen dimmed low. Her thumbs moved quickly, confidently. Once or twice, she smiled. Then she turned off the screen, set it down, and rolled over. Her back was to me. Her breathing even. Peaceful. I stared at the ceiling, wide awake, feeling like a stranger in my own bed. Something was broken. And I didn't know if it could be fixed or if it even should be. A week after the morning I saw that video, after the quiet, syrupy lies and vague explanations, I stopped pretending. I wasn't proud of it. I didn't like who I was becoming. But something inside me had hardened and it wouldn't go back. That night, after Rachel had gone to sleep, I sat in my office with a glass of scotch and downloaded a phone mirroring app. I'd researched it for days. It wasn't exactly legal, but it wasn't like I was hacking a stranger. It was my wife. My home. My peace I was trying to reclaim. Setting it up was surprisingly easy. Her phone synced through the home Wi-Fi. Once done, I waited. It was like sitting on a cliff's edge, staring down at a tidal wave I wasn't sure I wanted to hit me. At first, it was nothing. A few texts with coworkers. Emails. Shopping receipts. Then, just after midnight, I saw it. A message thread with someone saved as J. Can't wait to see you again. This weekend feels so far away. My chest tightened. Her reply came moments later. I know. That townhouse wasn't enough. I still feel your hands on me. Attached was a photo, her, in a mirror, towel slipping down her back, bathroom tiles fogged behind her. I knew that bathroom. It wasn't ours. The text that followed. I booked the same place again. Saturday at 6. No rush to leave this time. Pinned below it was a location, a townhouse on the far side of the city tucked into a historic district I recognized. One of those cozy, expensive rentals with string lights, exposed brick, and a fireplace meant for wine glasses and whispered conversations. I stared at the screen for a long time. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. My hands didn't even shake. I just felt still. Like I'd been sitting in a leaking boat, hoping it would hold, and someone finally tipped the whole thing over. I made a plan. Simple. Quiet. I didn't want a confrontation. I didn't want a scene. I just wanted to see the truth with my own eyes. Saturday arrived and I told Rachel I was driving out to the hardware store to look at tiles for the bathroom. She barely looked up from her phone when she said, cool. Get those gray ones we saw last time. I nodded, grabbed my keys, and left. I parked a block from the pin location. The townhouse was exactly as I expected, warm glow from the windows, a porch with potted succulents, modern touches against a century-old structure. I waited until dusk when the world looked soft and blurry. The curtains weren't drawn. From across the street, I had a clear view into the living room. I saw her first, Rachel, wearing the navy sweater I'd complimented just a week before. She was barefoot, laughing, glass in hand. Then he stepped into frame. Tall, athletic, stubble that looked intentionally rugged. He touched her waist as he passed behind her, then kissed her on the cheek. She didn't flinch. She leaned into it. They moved to the couch. Sat close. Too close. I watched him tuck her legs over his lap like they were built for each other. I didn't need to see more. But I did. Later, they walked upstairs, his hand trailing behind him, tugging hers. Lights shifted. Shadows danced across the upstairs windows. I watched as she pulled her sweater off. She didn't close the blinds. She didn't think anyone was watching. I recorded what I saw. Not out of spite, but to have it. Proof. Something real so that the gaslighting couldn't continue. So that if she tried to make me feel insane again, I could press play. When it was done, I didn't drive straight home. I sat in the car, engine off, letting the cold creep in. I thought about our first apartment. About the time she got the flu and I slept on the hardwood floor next to her because she didn't want to be alone. About the time she cried when I forgot our anniversary, not because I forgot, but because she thought I didn't care. I thought about how far we drifted. And when. I didn't feel rage. I felt absence. A black hole where the life I knew had been. When I finally got home, it was past midnight. Rachel was already in bed, her hair wet from a shower, her face buried in a pillow. She looked peaceful. It made me sick. I didn't sleep. The next morning, she made pancakes. Hummed while she poured syrup. I watched her closely. She moved like someone who had nothing to hide. Like someone who had decided long ago that the guilt wasn't worth carrying. You okay? She asked when she noticed I hadn't touched my plate. I nodded. Just tired. She smiled. Long drive yesterday? Yeah, I said. Something like that. She leaned over and kissed my forehead. Maybe we should take a trip soon. Just the two of us. I nodded again, swallowing the bile in my throat. Yeah. Maybe. I didn't mention the footage. I didn't bring up the texts. I didn't confront her that day. Or the next. Because I knew then I was done talking. Done giving chances. Done pretending. That footage was never meant for revenge. It wasn't a we*p*n. It was closure. Something to remind me that I wasn't crazy. That the woman beside me in bed each night was no longer mine, not in the way that mattered. From that day forward, I began preparing quietly for the next step. I started closing accounts. Looking at places out of state. Searching for something I hadn't allowed myself to want in a long time. An exit. And the peace that might come with it. At dawn, I left. There was no dramatic note. No confrontation. No bags flung down the stairs, no voice raised in bitter clarity. I simply packed what I needed: 3 shirts, 2 pairs of jeans, toiletries, and the journal I used to sketch out my thoughts when I still believed things could be fixed. I laid my keys on the kitchen table beside the ceramic dish we used to toss spare change into. Next to them, I placed my wedding ring. Not out of spite, not as some cinematic gesture. Just because I couldn't carry it anymore. It weighed too much for something so small. The dogs were still asleep. I kissed them on their heads, careful not to wake them. I paused in the doorway of our bedroom. Rachel was tangled in the sheets, arm thrown over the empty side of the bed. She looked peaceful, like someone who hadn't noticed the world burning around her. I didn't hate her. I didn't even feel anger anymore. Just a kind of grief so quiet and deep it made my bones ache. I walked out without making a sound. By 7 a.m. I was on a train headed west, the city growing smaller behind me like a fading memory. No one knew where I was going. I hadn't told my friends. I hadn't called my parents. I didn't even have a solid plan. All I had was a duffel bag, a half-charged phone I intended to toss eventually, and the name of a town in Iowa that barely existed on most maps, a place my grandfather used to live where he'd take me fishing as a kid. It was small, quiet, forgotten by time. And right then, that sounded like exactly what I needed. The train rocked gently, lulling me into something close to sleep. I stared out the window, watching the world blur past: gas stations, warehouses, empty parking lots, broken fences. It felt like crossing into another dimension. One where I didn't have to pretend. Where I wasn't someone's husband or someone's disappointment. Just a man with a past he didn't want to carry anymore. When I arrived, the air smelled like damp leaves and earth. It was colder than I expected. The town was still as I remembered it: red brick buildings, a diner with peeling paint, a grocery store that closed at 7 p.m. I found a small cabin near a lake. It had a rusted mailbox, creaky floorboards, and a roof that needed patching. It was perfect. The owner, an old man named Gerald, barely asked questions. Just handed me the keys, shrugged, and said, "People come here for a reason. Or to forget one." I paid cash. Didn't give my last name. The first night, I slept on the floor, the mattress still cold from disuse. I listened to the wind clawing at the windows and the occasional creak of the trees outside. It wasn't peace, not yet, but it was silence. And that was enough. The next morning, I walked into town and asked about work. Gerald told me the local lumberyard needed help. I showed up at 6 a.m. the next day, said I wasn't afraid of hard labor. The foreman took one look at my hands, soft, city-worn, and said, "You'll be sore in 2 hours." He wasn't wrong. But I kept showing up. Every day I chopped, lifted, carried. My muscles burned, my palms blistered, and I came home with splinters in places I didn't know could hurt. But it felt good. Real. Honest in a way my old life hadn't been in years. In the evenings, I worked on an old motorcycle the previous tenant left behind. It didn't run. The engine was a mess. But I liked sitting beside it with a wrench in one hand and oil on my shirt, pretending I had all the time in the world. I ignored my phone. Turned off all notifications. After the first few days, I stopped checking it entirely. Rachel called probably dozens of times. She texted, emailed. I didn't read a single message. To the rest of the world, I had vanished. And the strange thing was, I didn't miss any of it. I didn't miss the noise of the city. I didn't miss the social obligations, the performative love, the life curated to look perfect from the outside while crumbling on the inside. I didn't miss pretending to believe lies just because the truth was too painful. What I did miss, sometimes, was the version of us that had existed before the rot set in. The nights when we stayed up talking until 3 a.m. laughing about nothing. The way she used to pull me back to bed when I got up too early. The little songs she made up when she cooked. I missed that Rachel. But she was gone. And maybe I had been gone for longer than I wanted to admit. I started keeping a journal again. Not like before. These weren't plans or goals. Just thoughts. Observations. Bits of conversations I imagined having but never would. One entry I remember writing. Today I didn't think about her until noon. That's a new record. Progress, I guess. Or maybe numbness. Another. There's something sacred about being forgotten. About not being expected. I think I was only ever visible when I was useful. Weeks passed. I built a routine. Work. Fixing the bike. Watching the lake at sunset. Listening to the wind carry sounds from houses I didn't recognize. I'd sit on the porch with a blanket over my lap, drinking instant coffee and wondering if I was healing or just hiding. Some days it felt like both. Every once in a while, I'd overhear someone in town talking about loss, someone who'd buried a spouse, or lost a child, or been cheated out of money. And I'd realize, with strange clarity, that people around me were carrying grief like scars. Quiet, constant. They just wore it better. One night, I stood at the edge of the lake, toes in the freezing water, and let myself feel everything. I thought I might scream, or cry, or collapse. But I didn't. I just stood there, letting the cold cut through the fog in my head until I felt like I could breathe again. Eventually, I bought a second-hand guitar from a thrift store. I hadn't played in years, but the muscle memory came back slowly. I'd strum in the evenings, badly, out of tune, singing half-remembered lyrics. It didn't sound good, but it was mine. And in the silence of that cabin, between the splintered wood and the creaking pipes, I started to become someone else. Someone simpler. Someone who didn't wake up with dread clamped around his chest. I didn't leave to punish Rachel. I didn't leave to make a point. I left because the lie had become unbearable. Because staying had turned me into a version of myself I couldn't live with. And out there, by that lake, surrounded by nothing but trees and fog and my own thoughts, I realized something I hadn't dared admit. I didn't want her back. Not the way she was. Maybe not at all. Rachel didn't notice I was gone at first. Not really. She thought I was sulking somewhere, maybe staying with a friend, licking wounds that, in her mind, couldn't possibly be fatal. That's how it always went. An argument, a cool-off, and then I'd be back, because I always came back. But days passed. Then weeks. And silence has a way of screaming. At first, she left voicemails. Apologies. Explanations. Excuses that ranged from half-hearted to oddly clinical. It didn't mean anything, Gavin. We were in a weird place. You've been distant too. She never said the words she needed to. Just filled the gaps with noise. Eventually, when she realized I wasn't answering, the tone shifted. Her messages grew sharp, frantic. Then came the angry ones, accusations that I was being immature, dramatic, cruel. But I didn't respond. Not once. And without me to aim at, the chaos turned inward. The man she had risked everything for, the one from the townhouse, disappeared within days. Turns out he was married. Had a wife and 2 kids tucked away in a cul-de-sac 3 cities over. Rachel was just a side story to him. A thrill. His wife found out. Froze his accounts. Served him papers. He ghosted Rachel before the dust had even settled. Changed his number. Deleted his social media. Poof. Gone. She tried reaching out to him. I know this because, for a while, I still had access to her synced emails. I watched her send message after message. Please talk to me. I didn't know you were married. I thought we had something real. You promised me. No reply. Just silence. The same silence I was giving her. The people around her noticed the shift. Rachel was always the center of her orbit, friends gathered around her like satellites, pulled in by her charm. But when the smile faded and the cracks started to show, the orbit collapsed. Her best friend stopped answering her texts. Her coworkers kept their distance, cautious now, whispering behind her back about the mess with the client. Even her parents, who once praised her for her ambition and poise, began asking hard questions she didn't have answers to. And her younger sister, the one she'd so casually thrown under the bus about that video, finally snapped. I'm done lying for you, she wrote in one text. I can't keep covering your tracks. You're on your own now. Rachel had counted on everyone looking the other way. She'd always had a way of weaving stories that sounded just plausible enough to believe. But the thread unraveled faster than she expected. And she wasn't prepared for what the truth looked like in daylight. The house began falling apart too. The gutters overflowed from a storm she forgot to prep for. A pipe burst in the basement and sat leaking for days before she noticed the smell. Bills piled up on the counter unopened. The dishwasher broke and stayed broken. The paint on the front porch started to peel. Funny thing was, none of these were big disasters on their own. But together, they told a story. One she couldn't ignore. A life once held together by invisible threads, by shared responsibility, by quiet care, by a partner who filled in the blanks, was unraveling. She had always believed she didn't need me. And now she was starting to understand just how much I had done in silence. Even the business she had poured herself into began to fray at the edges. Clients didn't renew contracts. A junior partner left. Rumors circulated. She tried spinning the narrative, a temporary downturn, some restructuring, but it was clear she was flailing. I wasn't watching this unfold to gloat. I didn't check her accounts daily or laugh when I heard she was struggling. But now and then word would filter through the cracks. A friend I hadn't spoken to in months would mention seeing her looking off. My old neighbor said the grass hadn't been mowed in weeks. And each time I felt nothing. Not pity. Not satisfaction. Just distance. Like I was watching a city I used to live in sink beneath the ocean. And what about Jaden? Our son was the only tether I still felt. At first, Rachel tried to keep him out of it. She told him I was on a work trip. Then that I needed some space. But kids aren't stupid. They see the tension. They hear the late-night phone calls through paper-thin walls. They notice when someone stops showing up. He started acting out at school. Got into a fight. Missed an assignment. His teachers said he was quieter than usual, more withdrawn. Rachel told them it was a family situation. They nodded in that way teachers do, knowing but not pressing. One night, he found an old fishing photo. The three of us on a dock, smiling, squinting into the sun. He slipped it into an envelope, wrote a letter in his uneven, 12-year-old handwriting and mailed it to my last known address, my parents' place. He didn't expect me to answer. Just needed to be heard. That letter took a week to reach me. When I opened it, I stared at his words for a long time. He didn't ask where I was. He didn't demand explanations. He just wrote, "I miss you. I hope you're okay. I still have the pocket knife you gave me. I cleaned it. I caught a bluegill. It was tiny but cool. I told Mom not to throw it back. She did anyway. I think about that day a lot. No drama. No accusations. Just a boy missing his father." I didn't write back. Not yet. I didn't know what to say. But I folded the letter carefully, placed it in the drawer beside my bed, and read it every night for the next month. Rachel, meanwhile, was unraveling. She called me one night, drunk, probably. The voicemail was slurred, tearful. "Do you even care what's happening here? I'm drowning, Gavin. You just walked away like it was easy." She didn't realize that walking away was the hardest thing I'd ever done. That staying would have led something in me far deeper. Another time she messaged me. "I get it now. What I did. What I broke. I thought you'd always be there. I never thought you'd actually leave." It wasn't an apology. Not really. It was a realization. And by then, it was too late. She was beginning to understand what it meant to have the center fall out. To wake up in a house that echoed. To feel the weight of every unfinished sentence, every lie, every moment she thought she could control the outcome. She'd always been the architect of her world. But now the foundation was cracking. And the blueprints were gone. And for once, there was no one left to blame. Jaden was the only one who never stopped trying to find me. Rachel might have justified my absence with deflections, but Jaden knew better. Kids can feel it when something breaks, even when no one tells them. Especially then. He tried to stay strong from what little I heard. He kept up with school, played on the soccer team, did his chores. But Rachel was unraveling, and it was bleeding into his life. She became erratic, forgetful, short-tempered, drifting through their routines like a ghost. When Jaden asked about me, she gave vague, clipped answers. He needed time, he's dealing with something, or worse, I don't know. But he still had that old contact, a family friend, someone who knew where my parents lived. Through them, he got an address. It wasn't the exact location, but it was enough. He wrote me again. This time, the letter was shorter. "I'm okay, I guess. I miss you more on weekends. Sometimes I talk like you're still here. Mom cries when she thinks I'm not looking. I don't know what's going on, but I just want to know you're out there." This time I wrote back. It was only a few lines. I didn't explain everything. Just said I missed him too, that I was safe, and that I still had the little carving he made for Father's Day last year. I told him I was proud of him and that I'd always be around, even if I wasn't in the next room. I included a photo, me with the lake behind me, holding up the small engine I'd finally fixed on the motorcycle. A smile that didn't feel fake for once. Jaden never stopped hoping. That's what made him different. 6 months after I disappeared, Rachel and Jaden showed up in that small Iowa town. I was hauling sacks of animal feed into the back of a pickup outside the local market when I saw them. Rachel looked thinner, worn down in a way that went deeper than just being tired. Jaden stood next to her, taller than I remembered, clutching something in his hand, a folder or a photo maybe. We locked eyes. I didn't freeze. I just nodded, set down the sack, and went back to work. No words. No shock. Just the quiet acknowledgement of a life too fractured to patch. Jaden ran over and hugged me. I put a hand on his shoulder, held it there for a moment longer than necessary. He didn't ask questions. He didn't cry. Rachel watched from a few steps away, her expression unreadable, part remorse, part awe, part fear that she had finally come to the end of what she could control. I didn't invite them in. Didn't suggest coffee or closure. Instead, I asked for Jaden's school address. Told her I'd start the paperwork to stay in contact legally, properly. She nodded, biting her lip like she wanted to say more. Maybe she had rehearsed something. An apology. A plea. but I turned back to my truck before she could say it. Because that wasn't what this was about. It wasn't about revenge. It was preservation of the only bond one still had left. And that was enough.